Kerry and I every week take a look at one particular unit, defense or offense on one team, and look at the numbers, see if they tell us a story. And you mentioned the Niners before. Let's look at the Niners defense. And let's look at your quality numbers and where they rank. We'll go to those. And let's look at how good they've played this year. That's really been the strength of that team.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, they're still number one in scoring defense. They look great, again, against a struggling, wounded quarterback. The interesting thing, by the way, Monday night about that Pittsburgh game, the Steelers have this kind of reputation as being a running team. They pass the ball 44 times against the Saints with the wounded quarterback. But we know against the Niners. I'm sorry, but we know why. San Francisco right now, number 2 on our defensive hog index, the second best defensive front in football. Why that's important, Butch? Teams that are number 1 and number 2 in that indicator usually win championships, or at least compete for them. Up and down the board, number 1 in bendability. That's our measure of defensive efficiency. Not only are they the number 1 scoring defense, they're the most efficient defense in football. And by the way, that 23.5 yards per point allowed, we call it, might be the best since we introduced this indicator. I'll look it up after the show. So they're really...
So simply put, it takes another team 23 yards to score.
23.5 yards to score 1 point. So to score the equivalent of a touchdown, you're talking, what, almost 150 yards of offense to score 1 touchdown. That's a lot of wasted effort against that team, and that's why they're winning. They may give up yards, but they're not giving up points. So not only are they one of the best defensive fronts in football, number 1 in run defense, have not given up a running touchdown all year.
Yeah, what do you make of that?
I think it's a combination of 2 things. 1, they're very good against the run. 2, teams don't run as much anymore. Teams tend to just pass more instead of try to run in. But even with that said, that's pretty impressive. The record, the all-time NFL record, is 2 rushing touchdowns allowed in a season. The last team to do it was the 1971 Vikings, 40 years ago. The last time a team allowed as many as 2 in a season.
Well, so they broke the record technically last night.
Through 14
games.
Season. Yep, absolutely.
I agree with you. I tend to agree with you. It's a very impressive stat. It's NFL history and all that. And it also speaks to the fact that Patrick Willis and those linebackers and that front 7 is arguably the best in all of football. They've only allowed 185 points.
Well, and our defensive hog index is right now number 2. And I'm not sure someone off the top of my head, but number 1 Baltimore, so that makes sense. San Francisco is just doing a lot of little things right, and especially stopping the run. But also, to look at the entire defense, and Patrick Willis didn't play Monday night, mind you, and they still had a great defensive game. They're one of the best teams in defensive passer rating and pass defense. They are doing all the things right defensively you need to do to win.
To sum up, just my quick thought about the no rushing touchdowns, as impressive as it is, I do look at the era. I think you have to factor in, just like the quarterbacks. When you look at, and we'll get to Brady, Breeze, and Rodgers in a second. But when you look at the exponential number of touchdowns compared to the number of interceptions, you do have to factor in, and you say this all the time, that they were, prison shanking receivers back years ago.
Absolutely.
So you do have to factor that in. And the fact that they pass so much in nowadays football, you do have to factor in that the rushing touchdown is impressive, but, they still give up touchdowns through the air.
But not, with that said, how many, still fewer scores than anyone in football. But the thing is, they're so efficient defensively and pass defense, too. It's really a tough, it'd be interesting to see. I'm looking forward, because they're going to end up playing one of those teams. They're going to end up playing the Saints or the Packers, at least one of them, maybe both of them. And I think it's going to be, they're really the best defense in this age and this year in particular of high-flying offense. They're the one team that seems to have an old-fashioned kind of, knock them down, drag them out defense.